In Baghdad, in 2004, 3 soldiers from the Army's Bomb Disposal Unit investigated reports of improvised explosive devices. They used sophisticated robotic drones to investigate the device. The device consists of multiple unexploded ordnances wired together and hidden under a plastic, fabric tarp. A force led by Sergeant Thompson determines that he can detonate the IED with a plastic explosive charge activated from a safe distance. Thompson also said the explosion did not cause significant property damage and no loss of life. A small card is attached to the back of the robot and it is sent back to the blast zone. Before reaching the IED, the trailer loses one wheel and Thompson puts on a bulky bomb suit and heads for the trailer. He picks it up and carries it to the IED to operate properly. When he returns, his partner Sergeant Sanborn and Specialist Eldridge scan the immediate vicinity for anyone who seems suspicious or may be in the blast zone. When Thompson was about 25 yards from the bomb but still in the kill zone, Eldridge noticed the man who ran the butcher's shop was using his mobile phone. Eldridge yells at his Sanborn and the expert runs at the man and orders him to drop the phone. Sanborn tells Eldridge to shoot a man pressing a series of numbers on his phone. The bomb explodes while Thompson is still in the kill zone. The bomb's overpressure kills Thompson despite his bomb suit. A large amount of blood splattered inside the transparent visor of the helmet. Thompson's body is packed in a coffin and taken home, with Sanborn overseeing the process. He takes a quick look at Thompson's belongings before the casket is sealed. Back at the base, Eldridge is sitting in the lounge when the base psychologist, Colonel L.T. Cambridge, walks in and Eldridge asks how he is doing. Eldridge is still clearly shaken by the incident. He blanks his rifle multiple times, suggesting that if Thompson shoots the man with his cell phone, Thompson may still be alive. The team's new leader, Sergeant William James, arrives at the base. Sanborn meets him at the apartment unit where James is removing the plywood coverings from the windows. When Sanborn suggests that James keep them because of mortar shrapnel, James tells him that if the mortar shells went through the roof of the unit, it wouldn't do them any good anyway. The next day, the team responds to another IED report in the narrow city streets. After an initial investigation that connects them to the Army platoon that reported the bomb, James wears a suit similar to Thompson's earlier. As James approaches the bomb site, he throws a smoke grenade, upsetting Sanborn, who cannot see James, and gives him further instructions. Also, James does not communicate with his members of the team. This, too, is one of the factors Sanborn doesn't acknowledge. James finds a cannonball buried under a small pile of trash. He released it slightly and then noticed the second wire was away. He reveals the cable and discovers it is connected to his other 6 cables. When James pulls the connector, he will see 6 more shells. Another cable leads to a nearby building. James disarms 6 new grenades. He notices a man, presumably a bomber, leaving the building quickly. James fires one of the small detonators from one of the grenades and smiles at the man who disappears from view. Back in her Humvee, Sanborn tells James that she needs to communicate more during his surgery and that he doesn't have to treat his duties like solo acts. James brushes off his teammate. James does the same when he's talking to Sanborn while he's in the bathroom getting ready for another day's work. The team is called again with another bomb threat. This time the bomb is in a car parked in front of the United Nations building. As the building is evacuated, James wears a bomb suit and approaches the car, which suddenly bursts into flames. James puts out the fire with a fire extinguisher and begins inspecting the car while Eldridge and Sanborn act as lookouts. James opens the trunk and he finds several shells of the same type he had seen the day before. After a few moments, he takes his bomb suit off completely, knowing it won't protect him. There is enough explosive in the car to kill everyone nearby, including his teammates, even if they take cover. James disarms the shells and begins to search the car for the triggering device, a process that takes several minutes. At one point, when Sanborn tries to talk to him through a headset, James finds it distracting so he pulls it off and throws it aside. A few more very tense minutes pass as James searches the car. Sanborn and Eldridge notice several groups of Iraqis watching them from rooftops and from a minaret. We also see a man filming the incident with a video camera. James finally found the car's release device and released it. Upon returning to the Hummer, he lights a cigarette and is immediately punched in the face by Sanborn. Sanborn is again upset that James refuses to acknowledge him or question him. James doesn't seem offended oddly, nor is he angry with Sanborn. A colonel on the scene approached James and was clearly impressed with James' calm nerves and ability to deal with such a crisis. Ask James how many bombs he dropped and he will tell you the exact number. The colonel continues to impress. Back at the edge of the base, Sergeant James confronts an Iraqi boy selling pirated DVDs to soldiers. A boy who kicks a soccer ball and calls himself Beckham sold James a movie a few days ago. James wants his $5 back because the DVD was of poor quality. When Beckham tries to keep pushing him, James is amused and tells him he can keep the money if he can block the shot in the makeshift goal area set up by Beckham. Beckham blocks the shot, and James agrees to buy another film from him, gently threatening him if it's flawed. The team heads into the desert to detonate the explosives collected during the mission. As they prepared to detonate another bomb, James Sanborn stopped and drove briefly into the blast zone to retrieve the glove he had left there. While he is gone, Sanborn tells Eldridge to fragment him by detonating the bomb while James claims it was an accident, given the dangerous nature of the explosives they detonate in the desert. Sanborn seems very determined, but Eldridge convinces him of it. Back in town, the team found 2 SUVs parked on the route. They approached them and the inmates standing around as if they were another threat. The men standing near the vehicle quickly followed Sanborn and his team, dropping their weapons. One of the men turns out to be a British commando, and the bomb squad relaxes. The British say they have a flat tire, but they broke the jack handle. James provides gear from their Hummer. One of the Brits is prone to flat tires, but the Brit rewards members of the bomb squad for showing them the men he has captured. I'm looking for suddenly, a man repairing a tire is hit by sniper fire and falls before the actual gunshot can be heard. Everyone runs to hide. British Special Forces mercilessly shoot 2 fleeing prisoners. The reward for capturing a dead or alive is the same. The bomb squad and the British are pinned down. Another British man was killed operating a Hummer .50 caliber machine gun. The British team as leader took up a sniper's position on a small rocky hill and launched a counterattack with Barrett's rifle towards a distant stone building where enemy snipers and small groups were hiding. Fire. Adjusting Barrett's bipod, the man was struck in the chest by an enemy sniper and killed. Sanborn picks up the man's rifle and James finds him with a powerful scope. They fire multiple shots at their enemies and run out of rifle ammo. James has Eldridge go through the dead man's pockets and finds a complete magazine. However, the man's blood has been spilled on the cartridges, and they must be cleaned to get past Barrett's rifle. James helps a nauseating Eldridge clean up the rounds. The Sanborn can continue to target buildings and their occupants, and if James finds one, they can kill enemy forces. Eldridge notices another sniper lurking behind James and Sanborn and opens fire. Another man was beaten to death, though Eldridge is unsure of how well he did. The incident seems to have created a stronger bond between James and his teammates. After realizing that they can actually work together well as a team, they throw a party in James' living quarters, taking turns slapping each other's chests and drinking. After telling him why James seemed like such a wayward teammate and how he got their job, James gave them a box of parts he'd collected from nearly every bomb he'd defused. Show them. He says he keeps them as a reminder of how dangerous his job is. Eldridge and Sanborn are a little confused, but after an incident in the desert, they learn that James is actually a player on the team. On the next mission, Colonel Cambridge joins the team to patrol a building where bomb-making materials have been seen. Cambridge is outside while the team searches the building. Inside are bomb-making supplies and evidence that the bomb makers have just left. James finds the dead body of a boy who looks like Beckham. He orders Sanborn and Eldridge out of their burrows and discovers a large cut on the boy's chest. He opened it and found several pounds of plastic explosive in the corpse's abdominal cavity. He carries the boy outside in a Humvee. Outside, Cambridge is about to clear the locals from the streets when another IED is activated, killing him. Shortly after, Eldridge, unable to accept Cambridge's death, wanders the area in search of him. He also found Cambridge's helmet lying in the blast area. Back at the base, James talks to a man selling DVDs around the area. James asked the man if he knew Beckham, but the man's English wasn't very good and he couldn't tell me anything. James asks a nearby sergeant if the man is checking out, and the sergeant tells him the man is available. Later, as the man packs up and leaves, James jumps into a truck and forces him to take him to Beckham's house. When James entered the house, he found another man in the kitchen. He's scared, but surprisingly kind. James wants to know where Beckham is being held at gunpoint, but the man does not. Realizing that he has accidentally entered the wrong house, James leaves when the man's wife appears and begins yelling and throwing things. James makes his way across town back to base, where he passes hundreds of angry-looking locals. At his front gate he declared himself a U.S. soldier and was violently arrested. When the duty sergeant demands an explanation for not being at the base that night, James says he went to a brothel. The sergeant surreptitiously asks him where it is. The team answers calls during the night to check the blast zone. When they get there, they find that a bomb, presumably from a suicide bomber, has detonated near the oil tanker, causing a huge explosion radius. James investigates the area around the blast area and suspects that the bomber did not commit suicide, but instead stood outside the area and caused the blast from there. James is furious and orders Sanborn and Eldridge to search the nearby streets, vowing to find the bomber. The three parted ways. Gunshots are heard and Sanborn and James are reunited, but they see Eldridge being dragged away by 2 unidentified men. The 2 open fire, killing Eldridge's captors, but James punches Eldridge in the leg. James was so upset by his companion's injuries that he collapsed in the shower and was almost completely clothed. The next day, James and Sanborn meet Eldridge in a helicopter and evacuate him. Approaching their Humvee, Beckham unexpectedly appears alive and tries to talk to him, but James ignores him. In the helicopter, Eldridge is bitter about shooting James and says his femur was shattered and will take months to recover. He also chastises James for putting her in the danger zone to satisfy her adrenaline rush. Eldridge pops out. Sanborn and James respond to another bomb report and find a man standing alone in the middle of a large square. James has the translator order the man to his knees, and he changes into a suit and goes to him. When the man opened his coat, James found himself carrying several pounds of C4 attached to several iron bars locked together with a large padlock. A man pleads for his life and says he has a family. With only 2 minutes left on the bomb timer, James desperately tries to cut the lock, but there are too many locks and James is forced to abandon the man. Seconds later, the bomb explodes, killing the man and throwing James in a bomb suit out of the blast area. Sanborn, thinking he was killed in the same way as Thompson, runs to him. James wakes up stunned. When they return to base, Sanborn, still shaken by the incident, tells James that he is afraid to die in Iraq because he never had a wife or children. James comforts him and tries to convince his friends that he can go home and start his family. The team rotation ends and James returns home and family. While shopping at the store, he is overwhelmed by the cereal section with too many items to comprehend. He is also unable to adjust to life at home, and his relationship with his wife and daughter becomes increasingly strained. James decides to return to Iraq. The final scene of the film shows him starting a new rotation and approaching another bomb site in his suit. In the first months after the invasion of Iraq, Sergeant First Class William James became the new team leader of the U.S. Army's Bravo Company's Explosive Ordnance Disposal Unit, replacing Sergeant Thompson, who was killed by remote detonation. An improvised explosive device in Baghdad. He joined Sergeant J.T. Sanborn and Specialist Owen Eldridge's job is to radio the team leader in the bomb suit and give him a gun cover while he inspects the IED. Sanborn and Eldridge deemed him reckless due to James' claim to approach the suspected IED without first dispatching a bomb disposal robot during the first mission. Back at Camp Victory, James befriends Beckham, an Iraqi boy who works for a local merchant who operates on the base and sells bootlegged DVD movies of him to soldiers. The team is then called to the United Nations building in Baghdad, where a large bomb is planted in the trunk of a parked car. Sanborn and Eldridge provide cover while James diligently studies the complex bomb. Sanborn becomes increasingly concerned that 3 men are watching them from a minaret and another is filming them from a nearby rooftop. After the building is evacuated, he suggests that James retreat and send a team of engineers to defuse the bomb. Stay in the car until you disarm the device. Returning from a bomb explosion in the desert, the EOD team encounters a British private military company. They are quickly overrun by the enemy, and 3 of the British mercenaries are killed in the ensuing firefight, ending after Sanborn and James shoot the last of the rebels' snipers. For their next mission, the team heads to a warehouse to retrieve unexploded ordnance. While securing a warehouse, James discovers a boy's body with an unexploded ordnance surgically implanted in it. James is convinced it's Beckham, but Sanborn and Eldridge aren't entirely sure. That night, James forced the merchant Beckham worked for to take him to Beckham's house. Upon entering the house where he is taken, James meets an Iraqi professor who demands to know who was responsible for turning Beckham into Bada-bomb. The professor mistakes James for a CIA agent and quietly invites him to sit down as his family guest. The confused James is pushed out of the house by the man's wife and, aided by compassionate security guards, sneaks into Camp Victory. That same night, during a mission in which the EOD team successfully tracked down and killed 2 bomb makers, Eldridge is accidentally shot in the leg. The next morning, James receives a phone call from Beckham. Much of Beckham's confusion is James' complete disregard for him. Eldridge blames James for being wounded, claims that James unnecessarily risked his life just to get an adrenaline fix, and says that the mission James ordered was better suited to an infantry platoon. Mentioned the proposal of, with just 2 days left in their current tour, James and Sanborn were called in for help when a man was forced into a military checkpoint with a time bomb strapped to his chest. James is unable to remove or defuse the bomb in time and must escape before it detonates, and enjoys the prospect of eventually leaving Iraq to raise a family. James is next seen at home with his wife and child, visibly bored with civilian life. One night he had an inner monologue in the form of a loud conversation with his little son, saying there was only one he knew he loved. He is next seen returning to Iraq, ready to serve another year as part of the Delta Company's EOD team.